Akua sat at her desk, staring blankly at her schoolbooks. She was supposed to be studying for her exams, but her mind kept wandering back to her brother Kofi. He had been bedridden for days, and their parents were getting worried. As a high school student, Akua had always been fascinated by science and health. She spent most of her free time reading about diseases and treatment options, and even helped out at the local clinic with her volunteer work. But now, she was faced with a mystery that was beyond anything she could have imagined. It started when Kofi began complaining of stomach cramps and fatigue after drinking from the village well. At first, their parents thought it was just a minor bug, but as the days went by, Kofi's condition worsened. He became pale and weak, with dark circles under his eyes. Akua tried to get him to see a doctor, but their family's traditional healer, Auntie Emma, refused to touch him with her bare hands. According to their culture, only a person who had undergone special training could cure illnesses using herbal remedies. And even then, it was rare for someone to be deemed worthy of that title. Desperate for answers, Akua began to research on her own. She spent hours poring over books and online articles, trying to find any connection between Kofi's symptoms and the village well. But every lead seemed to end in a dead end. As the days turned into weeks, Akua became increasingly frustrated. Why was only Kofi getting sick? And what could be causing it? One day, while out collecting water from the well, Akua noticed something strange. The water looked cloudy and murky, unlike the clear water she was used to seeing. She took a sample back to her family's hut and showed it to Ani Yamada. The old woman's expression changed from curiosity to alarm as she examined the water. "This is not natural," she muttered to herself. "We must be careful." But Akua knew that we meant everyone in the village. She had seen children playing near the well, drinking from the same source without any issues. Unless there was something specific about Kofi's situation that made him more susceptible to the contamination. As she pondered these questions, a sense of unease settled over her. What if this was more than just a simple illness? What if it was something much bigger? Akua's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her mother calling her from outside. "Akua, come quickly. I need your help with the laundry." As she walked out to the courtyard, Akua noticed that her father was arguing with one of their neighbors, Mr. Mensa. She had never seen him so agitated before. "What's going on?" Akua asked, curiosity getting the better of her. "It's just a misunderstanding," Mr. Mensa said gruffly, turning away from her father. "Nothing to worry about." But Akua saw the tension in his body language. Something was bothering him, and she was determined to find out what it was. As the day went on, Akua couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. And when she finally lay down to sleep that night, her mind was still racing with questions about Kofi's illness and the village well. Little did she know, the answers were closer than she thought. Akua woke up to the sound of her mother calling out from downstairs. "Akua, come quickly and help me with the laundry." She stretched and yawned, still feeling a bit groggy from sleep. As she walked down to the kitchen, she noticed that the atmosphere had changed. The air seemed thick with tension, and everyone was whispering to each other in huddles. Her father was sitting at the table, his face red and sweaty. "What's going on?" Akua asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's just a misunderstanding," her mother replied quickly before turning to Akua. "Akua, help me with the laundry. We need to get it done today." As she began to sort the clothes, Akua couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She kept glancing at her father, who seemed increasingly agitated. Just as she was starting to think about Kofi's illness again, a loud knock on the door interrupted the silence. It was their neighbor, Mr. Mensa, with a worried look on his face. "Ah, thank goodness I caught you," he said quickly. "I need to speak with your father urgently." Her father stood up, his face redder than ever. "What is it, Mr. Mensa?" he growled. "I just got a call from the mine owner's office," Mr. Mensah replied hesitantly. "They're warning us about the water." Akua felt a shiver run down her spine. "The water?" she repeated. Mr. Mensah nodded quickly. "Yes, it seems that there are chemicals in the well water that could be harming people. They're urging us all to stop using the well until they figure out what's going on." Her father scoffed. "Chemicals? Don't be ridiculous. We've been drinking from that well for years and nothing has ever happened." But Mr. Mensah was insistent. "I'm telling you, it's not just about the chemicals. There are other things that could be causing this." Akua felt a chill run down her spine as she listened to the conversation. What were these other things that Mr. Mensah was talking about? And why did he seem so scared? As the day went on, Akua couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. She kept thinking about Kofi's illness and wondering if there was any connection between it and the chemicals in the well water. But every time she tried to bring it up with her family or friends, they seemed reluctant to discuss the topic. It was as if they were all hiding something from each other. As the sun began to set, Akua decided to take matters into her own hands. She snuck out of the house and made her way to the well, determined to get to the bottom of things. The air was thick with an eerie silence as she approached the well. The water looked cloudy and murky, just like Mr. Mensah had described. As she peered into the depths of the well, Akua saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A small container, partially submerged in the water, caught her eye. She reached out to grab it, but as soon as she did, the container began to leak water all over the ground. Akua felt a surge of fear as she realized that whatever was inside must have been designed to spill its contents at any moment. And then, just as she was about to pull out the container, she heard a voice behind her. "Akua, what are you doing?" it said. She spun around to see Mr. Mensah standing behind her, his eyes wide with fear. "I was just checking on the well," Akua stammered. Mr. Mensah shook his head. "No, you weren't. You were looking for something specific." Akua's heart began to beat faster as she realized that Mr. Mensah must have seen her grab the container. But why did he look so scared? "What do you know about Kofi's illness?" Akua asked quickly. Mr. Mensah hesitated before responding. "I don't know anything, but I do know that it's not an ordinary illness. It's like something is inside him, eating away at his insides." Akua felt a chill run down her spine as she listened to Mr. Mensah's words. What was going on? And what did he mean by something inside Kofi? As the darkness closed in around them, Akua knew that she had stumbled into something much bigger and more sinister than she could have ever imagined. But just as she was starting to think about her next move, a loud noise echoed through the night air. It sounded like machinery? The sound grew louder, and Akua felt the ground begin to shake beneath her feet. "What's happening?" she asked Mr. Mensah, her voice trembling with fear. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went black. When Akua came to, she was lying on the ground, her head throbbing with pain. The darkness around her seemed to be closing in, and she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was very wrong. As she struggled to sit up, she saw a figure standing over her. It was her father, his face twisted with anger. "Akua, what did I tell you?" he growled. "You were supposed to stay away from this." Akua's eyes widened as she realized what had happened. Her father must have been involved in something sinister, and she had stumbled upon it. But before she could ask any questions, a loud noise echoed through the air once again. This time, it was followed by the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate. The figure standing over her turned to face the sound, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. And Akua saw him take a step back, his expression one of horror. "It's coming," he whispered. As Akua watched in terror, a massive machine emerged from the darkness, its lights casting an eerie glow over the landscape. The machine was enormous, with pipes and machinery spewing out of it like a snake. And at its center, Akua saw something that made her blood run cold. A large metal container, partially submerged in the water of the well. Akua's eyes were fixed on the metal container, her mind racing with questions. What was inside? Why was it being transported to their village? As she watched, the machine began to move closer, its lights illuminating the dark landscape. Akua felt a sense of dread wash over her, as if she was witnessing something that was meant to remain hidden. The figure standing over her seemed to be frozen in place, his eyes fixed on the machine with a mixture of fear and fascination. Akua's father, too, was transfixed, his eyes gleaming with a sinister light. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went still. The machine stopped moving, its lights fading into darkness. The figure and her father remained frozen, their faces etched with anticipation. Akua, however, felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She knew that she had to act fast before whatever was inside the container could be unleashed on their village. Without hesitation, she scrambled to her feet, her eyes fixed on the machine. She knew that it was too late to stop it now, but she had to try and get some answers. As she approached the machine, Akua saw that it was covered in warning signs and labels. Danger. Do not approach was scrawled across one side, while another sign read experimental materials. She reached out a hand to touch the machine, and as she did, the figure standing over her spoke up. Akua, don't! He shouted, his voice filled with urgency. You don't understand what you're dealing with. But Akua was beyond reason. She knew that she had to uncover the truth, no matter what the cost. As she continued to examine the machine, Akua noticed something strange. A small keypad on the side of the container seemed to be glowing with an eerie light. Without hesitation, she pressed a button, and the machine sprang to life. The lights flashed brighter, while the sound of machinery whirred to life. The figure standing over her took a step back, his eyes wide with fear. Akua, you fool! He shouted. But Akua was undeterred. She knew that she had to keep going, no matter what. As the machine continued to hum and whir, Akua felt a sense of excitement building inside her. What secrets lay hidden in the container? And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went silent. The lights faded, while the sound of machinery died away. Akua was left standing alone, her heart pounding with excitement. She knew that she had to open the container and find out what was inside. Without hesitation, she reached out and opened the lid. A bright light spilled out, illuminating the dark landscape. And then Akua saw it. A figure, lying motionless on a metal table. The same figure who had been transported to their village in the machine. Akua's eyes widened in shock as she realized what was happening. This was no ordinary illness. It was something much more sinister. As she watched, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted with malice. They were the owners of the mine, and they had been using this machine to spread a deadly virus throughout the village. Akua's eyes widened in horror as she realized that her father and Mr. Mensa had known all along. They had been working with the mine owners, helping them to cover up their sinister plans. But why? What could they gain from it? As Akua watched, the mine owners revealed their plan. They had been using the machine to create a new breed of super soldiers, ones who were immune to disease and injury. And Kofi, poor Kofi, was one of them. Akua felt a wave of grief wash over her as she realized what had happened to her friend. She knew that she had to act fast before it was too late. Without hesitation, she reached out and grabbed the container. "I won't let you do this," she shouted at the mine owners. But they were not afraid. They laughed in her face, their eyes gleaming with triumph. "You're just a foolish girl," one of them sneered. "You'll never stop us." But Akua was not alone. She had Mr. Mensa and other villagers on her side, all of whom were determined to bring the mine owners down. Together, they fought back against the mine owners, using whatever means necessary to stop them from spreading their deadly virus. And in the end, it was Akua who came up with a plan. She remembered something that Mr. Mensa had told her earlier about the machine's weaknesses. With newfound determination, she set out to destroy the machine once and for all. As they approached the machine, Akua could feel the air thickening with tension. The mine owners were waiting for them, their eyes blazing with fury. But Akua was not afraid. She knew that she had the upper hand. With a fierce cry, she launched herself at the machine, using every ounce of strength she possessed to destroy it. The machine let out a deafening screech as it began to malfunction. The lights flickered wildly, while the sound of machinery grew louder and more intense. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went silent. The machine lay motionless on the ground, its parts scattered all over the landscape. The mine owners were defeated, their plan foiled once and for all. As Akua stood victorious, she felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. She had saved her village and brought justice to those who had wronged them. But as she looked around at the devastation, she knew that there was still much work to be done. The villagers would need time to recover from the ordeal and to rebuild their community. And Akua knew that she would be there for them every step of the way. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting a new light on the landscape, Akua felt a sense of hope and renewal. She knew that she had found her purpose in life, and that she would always stand up for what was right. And as for Kofi, he may have been gone, but his memory lived on, a reminder of the sacrifices he had made to protect their village. Akua smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she would always carry Kofi's memory with her, and that it would guide her every step of the way. The story of Akua and the silent sickness would go down in history as a testament to the power of courage and determination. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times there is always hope, and that together we can overcome any obstacle. Years went by, and the village began to heal. The villagers rebuilt their community, and Akua became a leader among them. She never forgot Kofi's sacrifice, and continued to fight for justice whenever she saw it necessary. And though the memory of the silent sickness would always haunt her, she knew that it had also given her a sense of purpose. One day, as she stood on the outskirts of the village, looking out at the vast expanse of the landscape, Akua felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had saved her village and brought justice to those who had wronged them. And in doing so, she had found her own voice and her own place in the world. The wind rustled through her hair as she stood tall, her eyes scanning the horizon. She knew that there would always be challenges ahead, but she was ready for whatever came next. For Akua had discovered something inside herself that day, a fire that burned bright and true, a flame that would guide her every step of the way. And so, with a sense of purpose and determination, Akua set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead.